All right, my friends, I have 8 big stories for you today. We'll start in Austria, in what's widely seen as a move that may further paralyze the EU to Russia's actions. Austria's 2024 National Council election has resulted in a victory for the far-right Freedom Party of Austria, securing 29.2% of the vote. Okay, so I don't know a lot about these guys. And if you're from that part of Europe and you have some insight, please put it in the comments below what this means. According to the Kyiv Post, it looks like this far-right Freedom Party won, and it's going to become more Russia-friendly or Russia-centric. Okay, now if you look at the map, Austria is here. Hungary is the other thorn in the flesh, sometimes Slovakia, and then the former Yugoslavia, those kind of nations. That's really where this kind of pro-Russian or anti-Europe but pro-Russian Empire sentiment comes from. Now, somebody somewhere along the way had said something that I thought was interesting, and they were saying, well, they remember the glory days of their empire and kind of pine for it, and maybe that's part of what's going on here. Look at the map. Here's Hungary, here's Austria, here is the former Yugoslavia, all is part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Now there's a little bit up here that's actually Ukraine, that, Hungary, like the Russians like to say, well, Hungary is going to get this part of Ukraine back. And to their credit, Romania stays out of it, right? So it's an interesting theory. I'd like to know what you think about this. I am bringing a thought forward, but I'm not saying this is what's happening. I'm speculating and thinking through this, and just more like a thought experiment. Okay, second big story. The Biden administration has classified its Ukraine aid strategy document, contrary to congressional requirements for public disclosure, raising GOP criticism. I talked about this the other day. This was for the $60 billion in Ukraine aid. This was part of what they were supposed to do, but they classified it. Okay, maybe the Biden administration had a reason to classify it. But right now, the Ukrainians are actually making much of their plan available. Here's Yermak. Ukraine to reveal their victory plan, keeping crucial details confidential, but Ukraine's leadership plans to disclose its victory plan while maintaining secrecy around sensitive details. Okay, it's just an odd contrast. Okay, big story number 3. A ceasefire. There's talk about having a ceasefire or a potential ceasefire as part of a peace plan or a road to peace or that sort of thing. A ceasefire, as desirable as a ceasefire may be, then it would entail enormous risks for Ukraine. For one thing, a pause would give Russia's military time to recruit replacements for the estimated 30,000 soldiers it is losing each month. Plan a new mobilization effort, address operational shortcomings, replenish its weapon stocks. Putin would likely use such a truce to simply plan more attacks, as he has done repeatedly in the past, including after his previous invasion in 2014. Compounding this risk, a pause could jeopardize international support for Ukraine, making it all the harder to defend itself against a revitalized Russia. I think that's probably pretty fair. So I would not urge that sort of thing. Meanwhile, with Russia repeatedly able to contain U.S. foreign policy with a single mention of nuclear, wow, what a turn of phrase that is. The Russians are containing the West. It's mind-blowing, but that I think is fair in with nuclear threats. Putin doubles down on the destruction of Ukraine, vowing to protect Russian speakers against neo-Nazi dictatorship. If you think we're making this up, let's just watch a few moments. Well, we'll watch about a minute of him talking. Dear friends, dear citizens of Russia, today, September 30th, we celebrate the day of reunification with Russia and the Donetsk, Luhansk People's Republic, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions. Okay, that's when they formally acknowledge that these are part of Russia when they grabbed it. I congratulate all of them. We walked toward it through years and difficult challenges. We knew in what unbearable conditions of constant shelling blockade Donbass lived for 8 long years, what oppression the inhabitants of Novorossiya were subjected to. They stood up against the armed coup d'etat in Kiev and fought back against the neo-Nazi dictatorship that wanted to tear them away from their historic homeland, from Russia, forever. We did not abandon our brothers and sisters. We tried. Okay, so when they're talking about Novorossiya, New Russia, Catherine the Great, right? That's talking about the land grab of parts of what is Ukraine. And in fairness, it was Ukrainian, it was Russian, it was Ukrainian. Okay, we get that. But then tear them away from their historic homeland? This isn't their historic homeland. Across the border might be their historic homeland. And if they wanted to go there, they could go there. Nobody was stopping them. We tried to reach a peaceful conclusion to the most difficult conflict. You know how these negotiations ended: lies, forgery, and deceit. Well, yeah, it did end in lies, forgery, and deceit, but on the part of whom? Russia's doing that. Like when Russia talks, it's this weird smoke and mirrors effect. It's fascinating to watch. Okay, meanwhile, the Russians have some other problems. They have to restore a lot of their manpower. The Russian government has announced the conscription of another 133,000 men aged 18 to 30 beginning tomorrow. It's not going to go over well, but they're going to grab these men mostly from the least urban and least educated parts of Russia. Okay, Russian Prime Minister Mishustin arrived in Iran. According to Russian media, he will meet with the president and vice president of Iran. Will he ask for more weapons? And what will Russia promise in return? This axis of evil extends its partnership. And then a little bit later, he was off to another place. Russian, Belarusian, and Kazakh prime ministers arrived in Yerevan, that's in Armenia, to attend the Eurasian Intergovernmental Council meeting. Now, the Kazakhs aren't really part of that inner circle, and their Armenians want to be least involved, but still, these coordinating efforts are probably not going to be useful or good for Ukraine. Okay, next story. The Helsinki Commission calls to name Russia a persistent threat to global security, according to The Hill. The report urges to ensure Ukraine's victory in its war against Russia, calling for massive military and humanitarian assistance for Kyiv and allowing Ukraine's armed forces to strike deep into Russia with U.S.-provided weapons. From as long as it takes now has mutated to Ukraine's victory. That's very different. This is an important paradigm shift. Now, when Benjamin Schmidt testified before the Helsinki Commission, and Benjamin Schmidt, he's tied to University of Pennsylvania, to Duke, to Harvard, to the State Department, like he's pretty tied in. When he was asked about it, he said, the West has consistently been behind in an X-1 approach. Now, this is fascinating, and we're going to watch a little clip because he got it exactly right. Listen to this.
Well, Congressman, I absolutely agree. We should be careful and thoughtful about this. But let's step back and look at the fact that since day one, and your colleague, Mr. Cohen, has pointed this out. Look, I'm a physicist by training, so I do this in math. This is an X-1 equation, where X is what we should have been doing at any given moment, and X-1 is our one step behind. We've always been one step behind where we need to do and support Ukraine. That's resulted in 80% of the thermal power stations in Ukraine being destroyed, 50% of electricity capacity. It has created energy poverty and humanitarian crisis, the likes of which we have not seen since the Second World War in a country. And frankly, by allowing the Ukrainians to strike not only the missiles that are incoming, but the facilities that are launching these attacks on Ukrainian energy infrastructure, it is absolutely part of the energy security humanitarian crisis management that we need to be doing. Right. And at the same time, we really are seeing that we're still just not doing enough. And it's going to cost us a lot more as the transatlantic community to rebuild the entire Ukrainian energy grid than it will be to protect it now. So we better do as much as we can, as fast as we can, to ensure Ukraine's energy security and help it towards victory.
Wow, what a brilliant take. We're X-1. That's what we've been doing. I've talked about slow walking, but that wasn't as precise. X-1, where X is what we should be doing, and we've been doing just a little less than that, and it's caused all this problem. Gary Kasparov said this math is beyond feckless leaders and analysts in the West. Deterrence prevents escalation. The credible threat of force prevents escalation. Inflicting costs on the Russian aggressor prevents escalation. De-escalation is appeasement. He's referring right back to what was just said. Absolutely. And Gabrielis Landsbergis, he's the foreign minister from Lithuania, said Putin never escalates when we help Ukraine. He escalates when we don't help enough. Absolutely. All right. And if you think that I'm making stuff up, this patch reads, duct tape can fix everything, even Poland. I'm going to leave you with this image. This is where the Russian mindset is. All right, my friends, thank you for the time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes. Thank you to my members and my patrons, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.